Namaste. Aloha. Welcome to the Bhagavad Gita class. My name is Janapati Das. We are continuing. Sorry, we had to cut off a little soon on the last video, so we're just going to continue reading through chapter 6. I'd like to take this opportunity to offer my respects to you and to offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master Jagadguru, Siddhaswarapananda, and His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I hope that I may be pleasing to both of them by giving these classes. So let's begin by chanting Krishna's names. Thank you. Let's join along. Swarupananda Paramamsa Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prishtayate Samasida Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prishtayate Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaurabhakta Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaurabhakta Haribol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribol Haribol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribol Haribol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribol 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jai Jai Gurudev, Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Jai Gurudev, Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Jai Gurudev, Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada. hot for December. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. All right, so we're continuing the conversation in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. And Krishna has been explaining about the nature of a true yogi, of understanding the knowledge that the devotee, the living entity, has about Krishna and the living entities. Text 32. Atma pamyena sarvatra samam Pashati yo Arjuna, Shukam yavadi vadukyam, sa yogi paramo mataha. Atma, self, alpamyena, by comparison, sarvatra, everywhere, samam, equality, pashati, sees, yahi who, O Arjuna, shukam, happiness, va, or, yadi, if, va, or, dukam, distress, saha, such, yogi, transcendentalist, paramaha, perfect, mataha, considered. Translation, text 32. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all things, both in their happiness and distress, O Arjuna. So we're seeing growing patterns here, that what Krishna is explaining. A person who is a yogi is a person who is truly connected in love with Krishna, understands Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. I am not material. I am an eternal servant to Krishna, and my function is to render loving service to the Supreme. So in seeing that, they can see all, as Jesus Christ said, love the Lord God with your whole heart, and like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. So you can see the true equality. We strive so difficultly to have a materialistic equality in this world of like everyone's equal, Doesn't matter where you come from, what race you are, and all these labels, whether you're gay or straight or black or white or whatever. And we still cannot find an equality about that. But the true equality is not by the designation of the body. It is by the spiritual nature, being part and parcel of Krishna, being servants of Krishna. So in both the happiness and distress, so in our ups and downs in the material things, we keep our equanimity by having a pure vision of a yogi. Purport: one who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of the living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. So our distress that we experience is because of ignorance, is forgetfulness with God. If we knew our true relationship with God, we would not be distressed. And the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of the human being. Krishna is the proprietor of all lands and planets. The perfect yogi is the sincerest friend of all living entities. He knows that the living entity who is conditioned by the modes of material nature is subject to the threefold miseries due to forgetfulness of its relationship with Krishna. So those threefold miseries are the living entity is troubled by other living entities. So we see that from everything from our neighbors, maybe who may be playing music really loud, or somebody on the street who cuts us off on the road and flips us off. We're in an argument, or it may be flies or gnats or ants that are biting us. One way or another, we're always troubled by other living entities. So this is one of the material miseries. The second is, if we're not troubled by living entities, we're usually troubled by natural occurrences, what they term as here in, where is it? Wasn't in here. It was, I read it in another part of Bhaktivedanta's commentary. But having to do with like what the demigods enact on the living entities, usually through natural disasters, hurricanes, bad weather, hot weather, cold weather, hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, things that happen in the natural world. It's never really it's either too cold or too hot. It's not ever really perfect, so we're bothered by that. And we're not bothered by living entities. We're not bothered by the natural disaster. We are troubled by our own mind, one way or another. So these are the threefolds of miseries, but it's due to our forgetfulness of our relationship with Krishna. Because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. So when one has a taste of the happiness of your relationship with God, you want to share that naturally because you experience that love. And this is what our spiritual master instructs us in twofold. Apply sadhana bhakti practices in your life, chant the names of Krishna in your own life, but also share this with others, because there are so many living entities that are unhappy. We can just chant consistently like Tusta did, and there are living entities present wherever we go, in the forms of microbes and ants and bugs and humans and dogs and cats and all kinds of plants and trees. And there are all these living entities in different bodies that are maintaining the universe, but with their presence in this, who are all lost away from Krishna. And we can actually chant Krishna's names to help them. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world, and he is the dearest servitor of the Lord. There is nothing greater that anybody can do. The UN, donating all your money to different charities, those things are good. It's good to help people materially, but this is the best way, by teaching people about who they are and to chant Krishna's names. This is the greatest. You'll be the greatest philanthropist in the world. You'll be the greatest friend and dearest friend. You not only help that person, you help them after the death of their body. He is the dearest servitor of the Lord. Na tashasmad kashid me priyakrit tamaha. In other words, a devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities, and in this way he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection in yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast before a pure devotee of the Lord and the yogi interested only in his personal elevation. So we brought this theme up quite a bit, and I've always said, it's very strange to me that people don't make that connection with the self-centered desire to be better than anyone else, and to be envious of other people, because it becomes a me thing. Everybody's in a me in consciousness. It's about me. It's about my happiness. It's about my pleasure, and to the damn of the other people if they don't get the pleasure if I can get it. So the yogi understands that everything is owned and controlled by Krishna. They have this understanding. They know that even their body and them are owned by Krishna, and sees the illusion that other living entities are in, and wants to alleviate that and say, give up this proprietorship of things and surrender to Krishna, and you will be completely happy. And this is the greatest friend, because this will teach a person that they are not their body. Not only that, but they are also a servant of Krishna. And this is their natural, eternal status of what really makes them happy. Everything else that they try to engage in the material world by trying to be number one, trying to be God, will end in complete misery and continued existence in the material world, in the samsara state. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as a devotee who is trying his best to turn every man towards Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so it's not about, even when people, we've talked about these yogis, they want to, why do they want to meditate for a long period of time? To have mystic powers or to alleviate their sins. Like they go to the Ganges River and they run over children and men and women and children to get to the river to wash their body and be purified of their sins. And they don't really care about whether they're running people over, and they don't really care about whether they're polluting the Mother Ganges River. So they're really not much worse than elevationists in any other religion. So whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu, there are people who all have this elevationist theory, and it really is a self-centered, selfish, even if they are giving show of surrendering to God, that's really about their own salvation, or so-called salvation or elevation. They can go to heaven and enjoy with their families, or if you're a Muslim, you go to have a virgin in wine and stuff that you can't have when you're a Muslim. So it's like, we're not really the devotee of God should not be interested in anything other than the service, their devotional service to God, and that's what really makes them happy. Wherever you want to put me, God, my Lord, whether it's heaven, hell, earth, and being reborn, I will do that as long as I can be in the eternal service. Some service of you, loving service to you. Text 33. Arjuna uvacha yoyam yogash tavaya proktaha samyena madhusudana etashayam na pashami kanchala vat stitim stilam. Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna said, Yaha, the system, ayam, this, yogaha, mysticism, Tavaya, by you, Praktaha, described, Samyena, generally, Madhu Sadan, O killer of the demon Madhu, Etasha, of this, Aham, I, Na, do not, Pashami, see, Kanchalavat, due to being restless, Stitim, situation, Stilam, stable. Translation, text 33. Arjuna said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So here Arjuna brings up a very good point. If you're going out to the forest and you have to lay out a deer skin on, and you have to meditate long periods of time without, in very extreme weather, we've already brought this point up that in this day and age, it's very difficult to do that. Anybody who can actually sit out in the forest for long periods of time and meditate without being disturbed in the threefold miseries of other living entities biting your, it's the age of Kali. So we have very short attention span. We're plagued by anger, frustration, stupidity, short-term memory loss. So in this age, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has brought us a very simple and wonderful age of chanting the names of God. This is really all we have to do. We don't have to do all this. So Arjuna's saying, even Arjuna was a great saintly, spiritually elevated personality, a great warrior, could deal with fighting millions of people at one time, great, powerful warriors. I mean, this was the end of the previous age and the Bronze Age, and even Arjuna was seeing that this was going to be this practice is very difficult and unendurable, because the mind is restless and unsteady. We are so agitated by our minds. We have so many things going in on our minds. Somebody says something we don't like. It just sets off a whole kinds of fireworks in our mind. The system of mysticism described by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, beginning with the words Shucha Deshe and ending with Yogi Paramaha, is here being rejected by Arjuna out of a feeling of inability. It is not possible for an ordinary man to leave home and go to a secluded place in the mountains or jungle to practice yoga in the age of Kali. You know, some people try to escape. There was that book, we brought it up before, Into the Wild, and the guy he was disgusted by the materialism of modern life and just was like, I want to live off the grid. And there might be a few people who can do that, you know, I guess live off the grid, but they're not being a yogi. They're actually growing things and planting and building. And yogis are just like, they have a little hut and they, you know, maybe eat very little and whatnot, and they practice meditation all day. You know, that's all they do. And not really a lot of people can do that, and if anybody can do that nowadays. This present age is characterized by a bitter struggle for a life of short duration. Yeah, people were also living much longer lives. I mean, thousands of years, actually. People are not serious about self-realization, even by simple practical means, and what to speak of this difficult yoga system which regulates the mode of living, the matter of sitting, selection of place, and detachment of the mind of material engagements. As a practical man, Arjuna thought it was impossible to follow the system of yoga, even though he was favorably endowed in many ways. He belonged to the royal family and was highly elevated in terms of numerous qualities. He was a great warrior, he had great longevity, and above all, he was the most intimate friend of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 5,000 years ago, Arjuna had much better facilities than we do now, yet he refused to accept this system of yoga. In fact, we do not find any record in history of his practicing it at any time. Therefore, the system must be considered generally impossible in this age of Kali. Of course, it may be possible for some very few rare men, but the people in general, it is an impossible proposal. If this were so 5,000 years ago, then what of the present day? So Arjuna probably could have been able to do this. He was, a lot of times he makes these questions so that the future generations can take a look at this and say, yeah, you know, this is really, Kali Yuga progresses on, the Iron Age progresses on. It's going to get worse and worse, you know. Even in 50 years or 100 years, things have gotten so bad. It's like those who are imitating this yoga system in different so-called schools and societies, although complacent, are certainly wasting their time. They are completely in ignorance of the desired goal. So there are people who still try to, but their goal is to get some kind of siddhis or mystic yoga, or be able to elevate, do astral traveling, and elevate the life air in their body so they can merge with the Brahma Jyoti. All these goals are a waste of time because it doesn't really achieve the desired result of what people originally used this for. They would actually originally use this to leave at the time of their demise. They would just leave the body and go back to Krishna Loka or Vaikuntha Lokas. But that's just not possible in this day and age. Text 34. Kanchalam hi manaha Krishnas pramati balavad dridyam tasyaham nigalaham manye vayor iva suduksharam chanchalam flickering. He certainly, manaha, mind, Krishna, O Krishna, pramati, agitating, balavat, strong, dridyam, obstinate, tasya, it's, aham, I, nigalaham, subduing, manye, think, vayo, of the wind, iva, like, sudushkalam, difficult. Translation, text 34, for the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, it seems to me, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So there is another famous line. The mind is restless. I mean, really, just try putting your phone in a drawer, or give a kid who has their phone and just, try. I teach kids in middle school, and to try to keep those kids off the cell phone, let alone adults, to try to look at their phone, to try to see, oh, there's a text, ding, it's like they got to look at the phone. So it's restless, and they're thinking about, oh, the message somebody's going to send me, and they got to get to their phone. Turbulent, obstinate, very strong. The mind is really difficult. It's a difficult thing to control. The mind is so strong and obstinate, this is Bhaktivedanta, that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence, although mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. In the way Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati always said, you must beat your mind 100 times in the morning and 100 times at night to keep it from taking over your intelligence, really. For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, one may establish a mental equilibrium toward both friend and enemy, but ultimately no worldly man can do so. For this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind. In the Vedic literature it is said, Atmanam rati nam vidi shariram rata evacha buddhi nito salatim vidi mana pragraham evacha indriyani hayanahur vishayam teshu kochalan atmendriya mano yukto Bhakte Yahur Mani Shinaha. The individual is the passenger in the car of the material body, and the intelligence is the driver. Mind is the driving instrument, and the senses are the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So the self is on a ride with everybody, and even if your intelligence is driving the car, but they're like, all over the place, and you're just like, shit, whoa, you have to make sure everybody is, the horses are lined up, the driver's lined up in this car, right? The individual is just a passenger in the car, so you want to be in control of your car. Self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses, so it is understood by great thinkers. Intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, right? You're supposed to say, okay, shut up, mind. Or the mind is like, somebody cuts you off, and you're like, oh, motherfucker, I want to kill that person. But you're like, your intelligence goes, no, we're not going to kill that person, because then you go to jail, right? So it's just like, okay, whatever, you have to be like, nope, tell the mind, put the mind under control, right? So, yeah, the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes one's own intelligence. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The simile here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance in all humility. We call it the great mantra of a deliverance, Hare Krishna mantra, because it can help give us a higher taste. It can put the mind in its place by having a higher taste. We cannot artificially try to stop our mind from doing things. In fact, even when we chant, the mind will suggest to things, but the intelligence is supposed to be in the place there, lined with Krishna, and saying, no, I have a higher taste over here. I'm not going to do what the mind is suggesting, because the mind is like, I've used this analogy before. I've lived in these third world countries before, and you sometimes have these little ducks are D-U-C-K-C-T-S, not ducks like quack quack, but like little river outlets, or like little rivers and whatnot, and the water will go through there, but people dump all their body feces and garbage and whatnot in those things, so it's really gross a lot of these times. And you're just like, you would never, ever swim in that. So why would we, when our mind has got things in it like that, why do we can just say, okay, that's whatever, that is my mind. Where is my mind? So, but we don't have to dive in and be like, oh, this is yummy. I think I'll just engage in all this crap in my mind and just play with it and throw it all over the place and throw it all over everyone else. You don't need to do that. And so that's where your intelligence is supposed to say, you know what? Don't dive in the duck. You might get something really nasty infection. You know. So, simile here is using appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easy way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance in all humility. The method prescribed is Samvai Manaha Krishna Padala Vindaho. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna, only then will there remain no other engagement to agitate the mind. So in all humility, as Lord Chaitanya prays, one should chant the holy names of the Lord in a humble state of mind, feeling oneself to be lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others, and never, ever expecting respect in return. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. So that is a prayer that we were instructed by our spiritual master to recite every day, because it's significant. When we are chanting Krishna's names, we are in the presence of Krishna. With great humility, we are so fortunate by our spiritual master's grace and by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda, and Krishna to receive the Krishna in the form of his holy names that will purify our heart of all the dust accumulated together and turn us from lovers of mammon to lovers of man, lovers of God and lovers of man. You know, in other words, we will fulfill the commandment of Lord Jesus to love the Lord God with our whole heart and to love all the living beings. And this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. This is text 35. So Krishna's responding. Asham Shayam Mahabhago Mano Durni Graham Chalam Abhyashenatu Kanteya Vairagyayena Cha Nigriyate. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the personality of Godhead said, Asham Shayam, undoubtedly, Mahabaho, O mighty armed one, Manaha, mind, Durni Graham, difficult to curb, Chalam, flickering, Abhyashena, by practice, tu, but, Kanteya, O son of Kunti, Vairagyayena, by detachment, Cha, also, Griyate, can be so controlled. Translation, text 35. The Blessed Lord said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by constant practice and by detachment. So we'll learn what kind of practice this is and how we detach. Of course, we've been talking about that. We detach ourselves to Krishna. We detach ourselves naturally from Maya. Purport. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind as expressed by Arjuna is accepted by the personality of Godhead, but at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe strict rules and regulations such as placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. So we've learned about these 9 types. There's hearing, repeating, there's worshiping the deity and serving the Lord, serving the Lord's lotus feet, becoming the Lord's friend. These are different forms, of course, of, and we've talked about that before, but we are given sadhana bhakti. Sadhana means practice by our spiritual master, because our spiritual master is aware of where we are spiritually. And we cannot practice this form of bhakti yoga in its purest form where basically we have a lot of attachments for things materially when we start chanting. Different degrees, we're in a different spiritual place. We have so many desires and whatnot, and so we are chanting offensively, because we are not focused on Krishna completely. We are thinking of other things that go along with that. So we are encouraged to practice sadhana bhakti. Sadhana means practice, and we do our japa, we do our chanting, we follow the different kinds of rules, and this is what is purifying us. We try to do the best we can. We try to be the most pleasing we can to our spiritual master. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. And when we hear about Krishna, we have to use our ears. This is when we chant. We have to use our mouth, but we also have to use our ears. We also have to hear the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita from our spiritual master. So we need to be able to hear about Krishna. We need to hear about the pastimes of Krishna from our spiritual master. So hearing is so key, and if we're not listening, we're not really hearing. So we have to focus our mind to also. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. So we've done these classes on Krishna book, and we're starting, of course, the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a great way to hear. When we listen to the stories of Krishna, we may have heard, I've been chanting Krishna's names for 25 years or something like that, and that I hear the Krishna stories so many times, but every time it's so wonderful. We're all like, whoa, yeah, here's the story about Krishna and Balaram when they're in the forest of Vrindavan, and there was a demon that came, and we get real excited to hear about it. So it's nice. We can read the Krishna book, we can listen to the Krishna book over and over and over again, and this is purifying for our hearts and our minds, and it's very exciting for us. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn vairagra. Vairagra means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind and spirit. So this is what Krishna was talking about to Arjuna. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. So yes, it's very difficult to try to, that's why Arjuna was saying it's very difficult to try to, take the mind away from things that go on in the mind just artificially, because we're really attached to them. And we need something that, it's like, well, why? Why would I detach from myself? I'm getting some pleasure out of this, because I would need this. I need Krishna consciousness, which has more taste. So if I do this, I won't be doing this as much, because it will become less and less tasteful, paltry, right? This is practical because hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. The attachment is called pareshanubhuti, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. Yeah. Krishna, my spiritual master, has likened the Bhakti Yoga as coming into a banquet of just amazing food everywhere. Everywhere. And you're just like, whoa, I'm so hungry, but you have to eat some and let it, and you just feel how it feels when you're taking in this knowledge, and you can feel the life coming back to you. It's wonderful. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind, and eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. The treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. Text 36. Asham yatat mana yogo dushpraya iti me matihi. Vashyat manaha tu yatatat. Shakro baptum apayata. Ashamyata, unbridled. Atmana, by the mind. Yogaha, self-realization. Dushprapa, difficult to obtain. Iti, thus. Me, my. Mati, opinion. Vashya, controlled. Atmana, by the mind. Tu, but. Yatata, while endeavoring. Shakyaha, practical. Avaptum, to achieve. Apayata, appropriate means. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by right means is assured of success. That is my opinion. So, once again, if Krishna says, my opinion, it's capital M-Y. It's like, when we give our opinion, Bhaktivedanta said that even the drunk in the street has an opinion. We don't really care about most people's opinion except for our spiritual master and Krishna. And when Krishna says this is my opinion, he means this is the fact, the absolute truth. So we don't need to worry about, well, is this true or what, he labels it as an opinion to Arjuna because later he says, this is my opinion. This is what I'm telling you is the best route. You can make your own decision now. This is the free choice of the living entity, right? So, here Krishna's explaining the thing is, if the mind is controlled by Krishna consciousness, and they are striving by the right means by applying what their spiritual master and what Krishna wants them to do, they are assured of success. That is what Krishna is saying. And Krishna, of course, will go into greater detail as we go through this Bhagavad Gita. He's just unveiling this very gently and revealing the truth. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. So, if you're trying to engage yourself in spiritual activities, but you're constantly dampening it down by throwing dirt on it from the material desires and engagement, you're not going to get very far. Similarly, yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga practice may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, the mind must be controlled by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious. Okay. We are going to read one more verse. So here Arjuna brings up another question. Text 37. Arjuna uvacha. Ayatihi shladayo peto yogat chalata manashaha aprapya yoga samsiddhim kam gatim Krishna gachati. Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna said, yatihi, unsuccessful transcendentalist, shraddha, with faith, upetaha, engaged, yogat, from the mystic link, shalita, deviated, manashaha, of one who has such a mind, aprapya, failing, yoga shamshidim, highest perfection in mysticism, kam, which gatim, destination, Krishna, O Krishna, gachati, achieves. So Arjuna asks another very important question. Arjuna said, what is the destination of a man of faith who does not persevere, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain to perfection in mysticism? So a very good question, basically asking for the person engaging in spiritual life, this spiritual life of sadhana bhakti, what is the destination of the person who starts something, and then due to getting caught up in the world, stops practice? Does it means that he's lost all the what he's worked for, or what? Purport: the path of self-realization or mysticism is described in the Bhagavad Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body, but that he is different from it, and that his happiness is in eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. These are transcendental beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, the practice of the Eightfold System, or by Bhakti Yoga. In each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity, his relationship with God, and the activities whereby he can reestablish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. So this is what we teach in meditation classes. We talk about our essence. We are not our body. We are spiritual in essence. Aham Brahmasmi. We talk about position. We are not the Supreme Spirit, but we are a part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit, the eternal servant of that Supreme Spirit. And our function, what we need to do to act upon this knowledge of being a spirit, soul, servant of Krishna is engage in loving service, eternal loving service to Krishna. That is our function. Following any of the above mentioned three methods, one is sure to reach the supreme goal sooner or later. This was asserted by the Lord in the second chapter. Even a little endeavor on the transcendental path offers a great hope for deliverance. So the little bit of endeavor. So this is what we're going to get into what Krishna says, but the things we do in this material world for success. We may be studying our whole life. We study our whole life for in a field of study, like scientist or teacher or mechanic or whatever it might be. We might be practicing to be a football star. We achieve all these things, but eventually something happens where we have to give it up, or we stop it. We have an injury, we can't do it anymore, or we just get too old and we die. All that information that we've done is lost, but not with spiritual life, as we will learn from what Bhaktivedanta says. This is asserted. Okay, so out of these three methods, the path of Bhakti Yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. To be doubly assured, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to confirm his former statement. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation of knowledge and the practice of Eightfold Yoga System are generally very difficult for this age. So Krishna is explaining these things, but he's gonna get to the point where he's like, you don't need to do these things. There's a much more direct way of doing these things. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be following the process. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on illusory energy. Very difficult to do. Try to control your mind, just like Arjuna was saying. It's very difficult to do. Consequently, whether a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. Yeah. She'll tell you all kinds of things, like, oh, you don't need to do that. That's just, And this, this is about you, this is your idea. She'll even tell you won't be like, oh, it's me, Maya Devi, telling you what to do. She'll be like, making you believe that you know what I think? He'll start saying, this is what Maya Devi was doing with Arjuna. You know what I think? And Arjuna's like, I got all these great ideas why I should not fight this war. But Maya Devi was like, no, you don't need to fight this war for Krishna. You don't need to do these things. You don't need to engage in service. These people are your family members. You want to save them and protect them. You'd be a really great king if you did that. Loving. People would care about you. Blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, oh, yeah. Yeah. Maya Devi has she is very good at her job. A conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called yogat chalita manasha, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. So what happens when you're following along and Maya Devi just like, go this way? What happens to all the what you've done before? So that's that's the question about that. I think we can read the answer here. Kachin nobaya vibrashtash China brayam iva nashati apratishto mahabaho vimudyo brahmana pati. So actually this is not, Arjuna's still asking the question here. Kachit, whether, not, ubaya, both, vibhashtra, deviated from, China, fallen, abulam, cloud, eva, likened, nashati, perishes, aprashtitaha, without any position, mahabaho, almighty armed Arjuna, vimujaha, bewildered, brahmana, of transcendence, pati, on the path. Translation, text 38. O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man, being deviated from the path of transcendence, perish like a ribbon cloud with no position in any sphere? Good question. So let's read those two together. Arjuna said, what is the destination of a man of faith who does not persevere, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man, being deviated from the path of transcendence, perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? Purport. There are two ways to progress. Those who are materialists have no interest in transcendence. Therefore, they are more interested in material advancement by economic development or in promotion to the higher planets by appropriate work. One who takes, that's interesting, see, it's labeling those people, that even religious people who want to be elevated to a higher heavenly thing, as a materialist, because it's even materialistic. When one takes to the path of transcendence, one has to cease all material activities and sacrifice all forms of so-called material happiness. If the aspiring transcendentalist fails, then he apparently loses both ways. In other words, he can enjoy neither material happiness nor material success. So Bhaktivedanta is saying the idea that Arjuna is trying to figure out is, if you're not making success in your spiritual life, but you've given up your material life, what do you have left if you don't succeed with both? He has no position. He is like a riven cloud. So the cloud just blown away. A cloud in the sky sometimes deviates from a small cloud and joins a big one. But if it cannot join a big one, then it is blown away by the wind and becomes a non-entity in the vast sky. The Brahmana Pati is the path of transcendental realization through knowing oneself to be spiritual in essence, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, who is manifested as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Lord Sri Krishna is the fullest manifestation of the Supreme Absolute Truth, and therefore one who is surrendered to the Supreme Person is a successful transcendentalist. To reach this goal of life through Brahman and Paramatma realization takes many, many births. Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Therefore, the supermost of transcendental realization is Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness, the direct method. So Bhaktivedanta is saying Bhakti Yoga is the direct method. So you may even be on the Bhakti Yoga process, but give it up for the rest of your life. So the question still remains, what happens? Do you give that up? Do you have nothing left over? And I'm going to read this last part of Arjuna's, and then we'll leave the cliffhanger for what Krishna says. Text 39, Etan ma me samshayam Krishna chetum arhashish asheshataha tavad anyaha samshamshayash yasha cheta nahi upapadyate etat. This is me, mine, samshayam, doubt, Krishna, O Krishna, chetum, do dispel, arhashid, requested to do, asheshataha, completely, tavat, yourself, anya, without, samshashyasha, of the doubt, asha, of this, cheta, remover, na, never, he, certainly, upapadyate, to be found. Translation: this is my doubt, O Arjuna. I ask you to dispel it completely, but for yourself, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. So this is a true attitude of a disciple to the spiritual master. There is nobody but you who can dispel this doubt. If you are surrendered to a spiritual master, you should never doubt that that your spiritual master can alleviate the doubt in your heart. Okay, so this is what Krishna is going to reveal to Arjuna, because Arjuna is surrendering his will to Krishna. Krishna is the perfect knower of past, present, and future. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord said that all living entities exist individually in the past, that they exist now in the present, and that they continue to retain individual identity in the future, even after liberation from the material entanglement. So he has already cleared up the question of the future of the individual living entity. Now, Arjuna wants to know of the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalist. No one is equal to or above Krishna, and certainly the so-called great sages and philosophers who are at the mercy of material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is the final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present, and future perfectly, but no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna consciousness, the conscious devotees alone can know what is what. So this is why when we say, this is my opinion, Krishna knows it's not his opinion. It's not an opinion. It is the opinion. It is the fact, absolute fact. So, yeah, we're going to leave it there. I will leave this, what Krishna says, for next time on text 40. And we'll see you next time. Namaste.